to get your reaction to Nina Jankowicz's comments on the Department of Homeland Security's new Disinformation Governance Board. Of course, that's going to be disbanded, but I bet you anything it'll be rebranded. Let's listen to what she said.
So every characterization of the board that you've heard up until now has been incorrect. And frankly, it's kind of ironic that the board itself was taken over by disinformation when it was meant to fight it.
A lot going on there, Amy, if you want to dissect it.
This one is a professional habitual liar, and she's excellent at it and doesn't seem to even think twice about it. She's a fruitcake, this one. I'm so glad that they have disbanded this disinformation czar, but I'm sadly in agreement with you as well on this, that they're most likely going to rebrand it. And it truly is 1984 Orwellian, at its finest. And so I think we need to stay vigilant, because it's still hiding around the corner.
Brendan Jankowicz continues. She went on to reply to comments over her being a partisan actor. Listen to what she said.
So to say that I'm just a partisan actor was wildly out of context. And then beyond that, it wasn't just, these mischaracterizations of my work, but it was death threats against my family. That's not something that is American. That is not how we should be acting when we have disagreements about policy in this country. I think we need to learn how to be adults in the room. And I don't have time for that childishness.
Wow. Okay, Brendan, I caught her saying there it's not American to threaten people over disagreements. I just immediately think of our Supreme Court justices enduring people protesting outside their front doors right now. What's your take on her statements there?
Sure. Well, I agree that no one should face death threats. Having faced those myself,
of course,
many of us in public life have faced those. They're horrible and reprehensible. So that is room for agreement for sure. But I want to go back to what you said earlier about not being a partisan actor. One only has to look at her own social media comments, her own commentary on things to find out where she stands, her partisan views, to see some of the things that she has said publicly. So all we're doing is referring to her own words, her own videos, her own singing, karaoke, to go back to what she believes. But then a broader point on this whole office. Look, we have a Department of Justice that has called parents who show up at school board meetings terrorists. And now we have a Department of Homeland Security that's going to combat disinformation. Those two don't seem disconnected to me. It seems like an attempt to try and squelch free speech. This is political correctness run amok. But the difference is, these are the people with the guns. The federal government are the people that actually have police powers and can do something about it. I think it's a horrible idea, and I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did, but I'm glad to see it go away.
Brendan, thank you. And Amy, always a pleasure seeing you. For some reason, this time of year, I always want to talk basketball. Are you a Golden State fan? Is that who you're rooting for?
No.
Who are you rooting for?
My husband's running for Congress now in the state of Nevada, so I haven't had time to watch much.
Oh, okay. Well, you let me down a little bit there, but that's what I get for throwing it out there. But, of course, your father-in-law, the late, great Jerry Tarkanian, one of the greatest basketball coaches ever. And at one time, I think, was offered the Lakers job, but we'll discuss that another time.
Yes. So we can talk hours on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Amy Tarkanian. And we will have more coming up.
Well, Republican voters turned out in droves to participate in the North Carolina primaries, far surpassing Democrat participation, even though there are more registered Democrat voters in that state.
Yeah, reports are citing that Republicans cast 150,000 more votes than Democrats in the North Carolina primaries, and that GOP turnout was 86% higher than in 2018, nearing 2020 levels, which, as a general election with a president, it usually is higher.
Of course. We're still in the primaries here. So can we expect the same GOP enthusiasm in the midterms? Our panel is back with us to discuss. Amy Tarkanian and Brendan Steinhauser. Brendan, I'm going to start with you here. To what do you attribute this enthusiasm, this great voter turnout? And again, as Bob pointed out, this is not national yet. This is still a primary.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and we are seeing this across the country. Young Americans for Liberty actually gets involved in, helping recruit students who will then go plug themselves into various efforts around the country to knock on doors and talk to voters. And we have seen something that we haven't seen in years. This type of enthusiasm reminds me of the 2010 elections, where conservative pro-liberty candidates running in the Republican Party did very well in the fall. And I remember the momentum early in that year, and we saw this in primaries across the country. The momentum today looks very similar to that. And I think that, all of this is attributed to a few factors. One, yes, being the party out of power, but two, just how atrocious the Democrats have been, leading with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, in terms of things that affect real Americans every day: gas prices, inflation, out of control spending. So people are getting hit in their pocketbooks, and I think that's why the Democrats are in a really bad situation this early in an election year.
Amy, there may be nobody better to talk to about this topic than you. I mean, your husband's running for office. I don't recall what it is, but tell us that, please. And also, Nevada is known to be, a swing state. It can go either way. I don't know whether he's in a particular district that tends to be red or blue.
Well, it's the only congressional district, unfortunately, in the state of Nevada that is considered a safe red seat. The other three, two of the three are considered swing, and one has now been drawn into a fairly safe Democratic seat. We, unfortunately, are currently a Democratic trifecta. We usually pride ourselves in being purple, but we have become very blue. Now, it's interesting because everything that he just said is 100% true. And I agree. This is almost another 2010. It's another Tea Party movement. It's another we are fed up movement. And we are seeing actually a number of the people who went to nonpartisan, especially here in the state of Nevada after this last election out of frustration and anger, are now slowly coming back to the Republican Party. We were actually the third. As far as party registration, it was nonpartisans, then Democrats, then Republicans. And we're now starting to see that change slightly to where the nonpartisans and even some Democrats are starting to change party affiliation to Republican because of the laundry list of problems under this administration.
Yeah, now we also wanted to get your reaction to former President George W. Bush misspeaking during a speech on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Take a listen.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway, 75.
Oh, wow.
I think he recovered fairly well. I don't know. Brendan, your take?
Really unfortunate. Really unfortunate. That was one of the worst Freudian slips I've ever seen. And I don't think the laughter helped, honestly. I think, I know he's trying to make light of it in a very awkward situation, but a very serious mishap, a very serious decision that led to the loss of hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives and American lives. So I think it's always, we need to be thoughtful when we think about and talk about going to war. And with everything going on in the news right now, America needs to be very careful about how we approach national security and foreign policy. Mm-hmm. So it's a really bad slip of the tongue for George W. Bush, and probably one he's not going to recover from for a while.
Amy, your thoughts?
Well, I think maybe on his subconscious mind, this guilt has been sitting for quite some time. And yes, it finally came to fruition, unfortunately. And I agree that we are in very scary times, and we need to be so cautious on every single word that comes out of our leaders' mouths, because the entire world is watching, and their next move literally will be made depending on what comes out of America. And that was an unfortunate slip.
Yeah, it was. And a lot of people have thought all along that maybe we went into the wrong country, certainly handled it improperly, and in retrospect, a lot of second thoughts. Interesting to hear him say what he did. It's almost like it wasn't filtered, so maybe that's what he really thinks now. So, or just making a joke. We can write a thesis on this, perhaps. Amy Tarkanian and Brendan Steinhauser, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.